So hi everyone, my name is Christine Hung, and then today I'm going to talk to you about music and Spotify. Before I begin, I have to ask the obvious question, do you guys listen to music? Yes, raise your hand if you listen to music. Okay, some people didn't raise their hands. Raise your hand if you do not listen to music. Great, we have a few. Oftentimes when I ask this question, people are just a little reluctant to show their hands. Hopefully I can convince you guys to at least try it out on Spotify at the end of this presentation. Is it coming up? Great. I can't see it here. All right, so speaking of listening, people are actually streaming a lot more, like basically more than ever, thanks to the wonderful technologies that's been made available in your homes, on your laptop, and also in your pockets. At Spotify alone, we now have 150 million active monthly users streaming from more than 60 countries. And if you think about when Spotify started, we've been around for 11 years. So that's a cumulative of 11 years of streaming data for us to analyze from. And I believe that adds up to more than 30 terabytes of data. So you might be wondering, like, why are people streaming so much, right? Aren't we competing with the publishers, the social media companies that were competing for people's attention? The interesting thing about music is that we're actually not competing as much as you think. And that's because music is complementary. If you think about your own listening behavior, right? Think about when you listen to music. You probably have music in the background when you are tweeting, when you're on Facebook. You probably have music on when you're working or when you're working out, right? There are many different sort of occasions where you can have music but do something else at the same time. According to research, we also know that a lot of people even listen to music when they're sleeping. And that's the reason why music is actually, it's basically like a mirror, and it reveals who you are, whether you like it or not. And that's the reason why at Spotify, because we have so much data that we can use, we were able to continue to find good ways to improve your user experience, come up with personalized experiences like your Discover Weekly or your Daily Mix. Today, I'm going to use myself as an example to show you how this works. So, as you can imagine at Spotify, we talk about music a lot, and it's inevitable that people ask you, like, what kind of music do you listen to, or who are your favorite artists? So if you ask me that question, this will be my official answer. I'm going to tell you that I'm really into Latin music. I really like Manu Chao, who's a famous Spanish punk rock artist. I'm also going to tell you that I really like Marisa Monte. She's famous for Bossa Nova, a Brazilian artist. I will also tell you that I like Jack Johnson a lot. Jack Johnson is my go-to when I need something just chill in the background. And of course, Madonna, the fabulous, talented feminist icon. So it's all good, right? Because this sort of fits the image that I want for myself. Because at Spotify, I want my colleagues to think that I am a serious music fan and I know what I want. But if you look at what I actually listen to, it's actually a very different story. So let's just look at what I streamed the most for the last 6 months. Let's look at the top 3 artists that I streamed the most. Number 3 was Manu Chao, right? What I just told you about, he's one of my favorite, which makes a lot of sense. This was the number 2 artist that I streamed the most. Does anyone know who this is? It's not Britney Spears, and it's not Madonna. This is Paulina Rubio. She is a very famous Mexican pop singer, and according to one of my friends, she's the Britney Spears of Latin music, right? So this would be someone that I typically would not tell you about because she's as mainstream as it can be, right? And like I say, I did not want the image of me like being affected by like mainstream sort of top 100 list or top artist. So now you know how this goes. Can you guess who is my most streamed artist? Just guess. Is it Justin Bieber? Or is it Taylor Swift? The reality is I don't even know who it is. This is what I stream the most. So let's just pause for a second and think about what's happening. I streamed this track 792 times in the last 6 months. So what does this mean? Right, let's think about it. What does this mean? I mean, you can, obviously, in my example, you can tell that perception is not reality. There are always these little secrets that we want to keep to ourselves. But I think this actually tells you a little bit more, right? Obviously, you can see that I'm pregnant and I'm having a baby. But do you think I streamed that song for this baby in my belly so that she can remember the lyrics when she was born? Probably not, right? You can probably confidently guess that I am already a mother and I have a toddler at home, at least one toddler at home who's obsessed with Wheels on the Bus, right? Makes sense. So, like from this example, you can see that because music reveals so much of ourselves, at Spotify, we are beginning to explore what we can learn about the audience just based on what they're listening to. So I'll give you a few examples. Can we measure like how open people are when it comes to discovering music, right? And from there, can we then infer, okay, because you're open to discovering music, you might also be open to trying out new products or trying out new experiences. Can we understand better in terms of how diversified your listening taste is? Are you a loyalist who like stick to one genre or just a few artists? Or are you more like an eclectic listener where you just like jump around between different things? Also, can we learn about how lean in or lean back you are? So are you a curator who always knows what to play? Or are you more like me? I oftentimes just want something in the background while I work. And then as we start to capture different types of user behavior, we are able to start mapping out critical moments of your life. So going back to my earlier example, right? Like if you look at my listening history, you're gonna see that I listen to Wheels on the Bus on repeat almost every night between 6 and 7. Not tonight, but in general, that's what I do. So you can probably guess that's when I'm at home playing with my daughter and she's obsessed with the song. You will also see that I use my running playlist every weekend, Saturday, Sunday, between exactly 8 and 8:30. And what does that tell you about me? It's probably pretty obvious that I also run during the weekend, and that means that I'm probably into like sports and like sort of athletic products. I mean, not right now, but that's something that you can start to learn about me. And then you might wonder, so how do we do all of this, right? It's very simple, just like, I'm sure many of you, like you're building machine learning algorithms, you're doing a lot of different prediction work. So at Spotify, we spend a lot of time collecting ground truth data. We primarily use the on-platform signals that we have. We then test it out, we tweak it, and then we turn them into real products. Here's an example of the type of testing that we do. If I have gamers in the audience, you guys probably know that about a month ago, we launched the integration with Xbox. So with Xbox, with the launch, the biggest question in our marketing team's mind was that, okay, so how do we find these gamers? So this time, instead of going with sort of the traditional route, if you think about, okay, who are the gamers? If you think about demographics, right? They tend to skew more towards male, they tend to be younger. But instead of doing that, we decided to just go straight to our modeling and predict directly like who the gamers will be. And this is the result that we saw. So we saw a significant increase in cross-device usage, which is what you always want. We saw a much higher engagement rate, and we were able to dramatically reduce the email opt-out rates as well because the messaging was really relevant. And most importantly, we were able to validate these new segments that we've been creating, and from there, continue to iterate. So I thought before I run out of time, I can just talk about one more thing. So if you can all just follow me and close your eyes just for a little bit, it won't be too long. Close your eyes and try to think of a time when you heard a song from TV or on the radio station that triggers some interesting distant memories for you. It could be the song from the first dance of your wedding. It could be a song that you listened to when you went on a road trip. Or it could be a song that someone special sent you in a mixtape. Okay, now think about how powerful that feeling is. Okay, now you can open your eyes. Thank you for cooperating. The feeling that you just had is called nostalgia. And if you ask me what I'm most nostalgic of, and this time I will be honest, what triggers very strong memories for me, it would be the Backstreet Boys, it would be Spice Girls, and then of course it's gonna be Britney Spears. Now you probably know how old I am, right? Especially for those of you who are in your mid-30s. This is you probably feel very strongly about these artists too. So to me, music is a way to remember, right? And those artists bring me back to my high school, my college days where I was so focused on dancing and exploring the world. At Spotify, we spent the last 12 months studying your nostalgia. And for those of you who use Spotify, you probably know that about a few weeks ago, we just launched this new product called Your Time Capsule. And this is basically a personalized playlist tailored specifically for your nostalgic obsession. And let's talk a little bit about how we came up with this, right? So we believe that nostalgia is a very strong emotion. So what we thought a year ago when we started this journey, we thought, okay, let's just look at what nostalgia actually means. So on this chart, what you see is on the y-axis, you see basically all of our users' current age. And at the x-axis, what you see is the age of the users when the music that they listened to actually came out. And the color represents intensity. And you can obviously see that there's a pretty high concentration here, right? And the way to interpret this chart is that regardless of how old you are, at least on Spotify, people keep going back to the music that they came out during their high school or during their teenage years, right? Which is pretty powerful. And so you will think, okay, so how do we come up with this playlist? Do you just look at how old people are and we just give them that, or we just give you your high school playlist? Of course not. Of course, it's a lot more sophisticated than that. So we actually ran a lot of tests internally just with employees, right, to see how we get it right. So basically here are the three major tests that we did. We first look at, so on Spotify, it's very easy for us to identify the songs that make you feel nostalgic, right? So that's the basic list that we provided. And then we basically group that based on your age and your country. We also tested out basically the Billboard, the top songs, right? So that's another category. And of course, we have to use our machine learning model. So we also did another experiment that's just basically a combination of the first two, but we really customized to your taste based on what you have been listening to. And guess which one is the most successful? Obviously, it's the third one. So that's how we came up with Your Time Capsule. And I believe this is all the time I have today. But I'm happy to chat more and feel free to ask me questions. The only thing I would say is that if you have not tried Your Time Capsule, please try it out and let us know how you like it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As an avid Spotify user, I mean, it's sort of incredible how targeted the whole thing is. Like the recommendation of the playlist, another playlist per day. I think it is another playlist per day or per style or something. And anyway,
it's normally per week. We don't have something that's per day.
It's only per week. Okay. Well, whatever it is, that works great for me.
It's great that you feel like it's per day, but yes, we don't have that yet.
How do you balance data-driven decisions and editorial-driven decisions in coming up? Are all those lists purely data-driven, including the hits list?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. So if you think about like the top hits, right, that's purely based on performance. But I would say in the last year, we really invested a lot, on the editorial side. So there is a big campaign going on called the Rev Caviar. So this is a new format that we're experimenting. And obviously, we have editors, we're working really closely with the artist community to like figure out how we can give you the best experience. And there are many other different types of editorial playlists, right? That we have rock this, we have all the playlists that's based on sort of different mood, right? So if you want to chill, there's like a chill playlist that you can use, for example. But then on the other hand, we also have a big team that's focusing on generating all the algorithmic playlists, right? So Discover Weekly, for example, everyone's Discover Weekly is different, right? So there's no way that we can really have sort of editorial intervention. So everything is purely based on what you've been listening to. And as you can imagine, we're always tweaking the model based on the feedback that we're getting to make it better.
Thank you. I want to open up to this one here.
This is wonderful. Thank you so much. Have you ever thought of integrating this with, say, personality tests or seeing which people would be compatible in jobs or other sets of more structured relationships? I mean, in a sense, if you have such an insight into that person and what is evocative and what is, profound for them, certainly it would be really interesting to say, how does this correlate with a personality test, for example?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question. We actually have some sort of collaborations with academic institutions, and we can actually pretty accurately predict people's personality just based on the data, right? So for example, what I talked about a little earlier in terms of like discovery, right? Like how open you are into just like discovering new music, it's actually correlated to just, how open you are in general in terms of like experiencing new things, right? So I can think of a lot of examples like that, but in terms of like how we're using it, I mean, right now we're still sort of really focusing on, okay, based on what we know about you, how can we improve your experience on our platform? We haven't sort of ventured beyond that because we feel like just on the platform, there's still so much more we can do.
Hi, thank you. Hi. So just one word on the Your Time Capsule. When I actually opened it up, the first song was a band called Sugar Cult, which was actually my first concert that I ever went to. So I was shocked that Spotify knew me so well. But my question is more on, are you focused on using collaborative filtering more than the actual like audio analysis to understand what kind of music the user would be more interested in?
I would say we use collaborative filtering to some extent, but that's not the only way we do it, right? Collaborative filtering is like classic what Amazon does. People who bought this product also bought this, right? So we can easily say people who listen to this also listen to the others. And that's actually one of the basic, I think is with the basic test that we did. But what we learned was that, when you do that, yes, you probably can get 60% of what people in that cohort would like, but it will never feel personalized enough, right? So for us, like, we really want you to have that sort of, surprise when you listen to it. Like we actually we videotape a lot of employees when we did the internal testing, and we literally have people like burst into tears because, it will like brought back such a strong emotion for them. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, because I've seen some startups that are starting to develop software that can compose music, right? And I'm wondering if you're looking at that and then looking at how different genres and different types of music affect people, sort of similar to the personality testing question.
I would say, yes, we sort of, we have internal discussions about like what happens when machines take over. But I would say our view is that that's probably still years away. At Spotify, we believe that sort of creativity is like really core to humanity. So I would say, in terms of what we want to focus on, right? Like if you look at Spotify's history in the last 10 years, we've been focusing a lot on the users, right? We want to make all the music in the world available to you. And I would say for the next 10 years, we want to focus more on the creators, right? If you think about the market, there's so many talented people who want to be musicians, but it's very difficult for them, right? If you look at sort of the way it works today, you have to be a big star in order to like have enough money to just be the star, right? Or be a musician. And for a lot of the people, like, we want to see how we can help them. We want to have as many sort of talented musicians. We want to make it possible for them to just be musicians instead of having to have multiple side jobs because, their income from music is just not enough.
Time for this, maybe one. Could probably do a couple, actually, one and then this one.
So you guys obviously have a very large platform. What kinds of incremental or contextual data sets do you add over the top of the kind of data that's generated on your platform? Like, do you look at weather? Do you look at other kinds of context around how people are listening to music and how that affects them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The answer is yes, we do. And as you can, like, for example, we actually did something, that's related to weather, right? And weather does affect how people listen. We had a partnership with AccuWeather, I think it was last year, and we did some analysis just in Chicago to understand, so when the weather changes, right, do people change what they listen to? And the answer is yes. So you can, as you can imagine, right, we're looking at things like location data, we're looking at sort of many different signals that we can add on to the first-party signals that we have. And that would definitely help us. Again, it's all about the context, right? The more context we have about you, the better user experience that we can create for you.
Great, last question.
Thanks for the comments. It's a really cool presentation. My question is around how have you guys successfully structured your data science organization to serve the broader objectives? It sounds like it's really been successful for you. I often hear there's like product, go-to-market, partnerships, and then data science. Like, how are you integrated to inform product development and then the right partnerships to get you the data you need to keep doing what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So we actually went through sort of, different iterations when it comes to like organizational structure. So the analytics organization used to be part of finance, right? And it's sort of very typical, especially for smaller companies. And as we grew, we realized that
No, this is fine.
it was, sorry.
Okay, that was some feedback from the back.
Okay, sorry. So but if you look at sort of how the evolution that we went through, right? We went from the analytics organization being part of finance to realize that actually, that doesn't really give the analyst or the data scientist enough context to do their job, because at that point, they were just taking requests from different teams, right? And it felt very transactional. Like we were using Jira tickets, and it's like, oh, marketing has this request, and it goes to this person. What we realized was that we have to, overall, like we have to make it we have to use a more decentralized model. So what we've been experimenting and what's been working really well is that now we have a centralized data organization within our R&D department, or I guess we say R&D, but it's basically tech, product, and design. So we have a centralized team that's focusing a lot on, what I just talked about, right? Building algorithms, figuring out how we can go from collecting data, producing data to like ship a product that's a data-driven product. But then at the same time, in all the business functions, in content, in advertising, in marketing, they have their own data scientists, their own analytical teams to support their day-to-day needs, right? And it works really well because if you look at the functional analysts or the data scientists, they have the context because they sit with the business on a daily basis. They know what's going on, right? And they can fulfill those needs, whereas for us centrally, we can really focusing on like building these models, testing out different things, learning from it. We don't have to worry about, last week marketing just ran this campaign and we have to like figure out how we do the ROI analysis.
Great, Kristen, thank you so much.
All right,
This was
thank
terrific.
you, thank you guys.